And let me welcome back Natalia Ortiz from the Clio Institute. It's all yours.
Thank you so much for taking the time to see me and listen to my lecture again. I know you've been with Clio now for 2 lectures. This will be your 3rd. So I thank you ahead of time for your time to come and listen to me. So today it's all about our biodiversity. Let me just get the screen up. So we're going to talk today about how important our biodiversity is to us, what's currently happening to it, and then we're going to look at solutions that both nature is providing for us as well as solutions that we can take as individuals. If there's a slide that you want to, we're a small group, so if there's a slide you want me to stop and you have a question on or a comment on, please feel free to unmute yourself and just let me know. And I'll try and be mindful of the time because I can talk a lot about this. So we'll get right to it. So this is a picture that I find fascinating because the first thing you think about when you see this picture is, oh, there's a deer crossing the road, right? That's what we would tend to think about. But if we take a moment and we think about what came first, the forest or the road, there's maybe a different way to view this picture now. And maybe it's the road that's crossing the forest. And this is, the goal of this presentation, is to really understand how we're connected to nature and that incredibly fine balance that nature has that we've unfortunately disrupted, and how we can get back to, once again, returning to what I like to call a better normal, where we live with nature and respect nature versus imposing ourselves on nature. So first and foremost, understanding what is biodiversity. It is all the different kinds of life you'll find in one area. The variety of animals, plant, fungi, even microorganisms like bacteria that make up our natural world. Each of these species and organisms work together in ecosystems to maintain balance and support life. Biodiversity supports everything in nature that we need to survive, like food, clean water, medicine, and even shelter. This picture here, I'm highlighting the biodiversity in our beautiful Everglades. And it's not just about our amazing animals, but it's also the homes that they live in, their habitats. That is also part of the biodiversity. So when we think about caring for our animals, we also have to think about caring for their habitats, because nature is all about balance. So our reality is that, we are experiencing the 6th mass extinction. 1 million animals and plant species, the highest number in human history, now face extinction, and many within decades. And these 4 animals that we see here are actually animals that have gone extinct either in 2018 or 2019, and there's definitely more of them. But I just wanted to highlight a few because, this is something that unfortunately we can't get back. There are some that are in captivity, like the Spix macaw, which I think a lot of children remember as the Rio movie. But in reality, in the wild, these animals no longer exist. So it's a really big issue that we need to solve, because we are part of this wonderful food chain as well. So why is this happening? So on land, our forests cover more than 30% of the Earth's surface, but we're cutting them down, to accommodate our demand for products, really. That's why we're in this situation. And then in our oceans, we're seeing devastating impacts as well. And I'll get to our oceans in a little bit. So first, let's look at our land. And basically the 4 main issues with land is logging, the cattle, crops, and urbanization. And this is actually a picture, once again, of our Everglades. And you can just see how we're slowly encroaching on it more and more. And to give you an example of our tropical forests, the Union of Concerned Scientists estimate that an area the size of Switzerland is lost to deforestation every year. So that's a pretty big, it's a lot of land that we're losing to deforestation. And with regards to our species, as of January 2020, the International Union for Conservation lists more than 32,000 species that are threatened with extinction. Out of those, 203 mammalian species are critically endangered. And these are just a couple of images of species that we see that are now critically endangered. So, humankind is destroying natural environments at an accelerated rate. In doing so, we're putting human populations in contact with new pathogens. Trafficking and confinement of diverse wild animals that don't belong together, that are now finding themselves together, is allowing for infectious agents to recombine and cross the barriers between species, and that includes us as humans. This was the case for the SARS and has been the case for COVID-19. While they're still trying to figure out which animals it was, it did come from an animal. So it just goes to show that, when we unbalance nature, nature fights back. And so it's really important for us to understand that we play a huge role in what happens moving forward now that, we have a moment to come back to a normal that hopefully understands and respects nature in a way that we haven't done so before. And, I want to take a quick moment to pay homage to the bee, because bees are the pollinators. They pollinate about 1/3 of the plants we eat. A service that has been valued at $168 billion per year worldwide. Some plants are only pollinated by one specific species of a bee. Things like diesel fuels, pesticides, different kinds of agriculture methods are impacting the bees, and climate change is also impacting the bees dramatically with the relationship they have with the plants. So this is an incredibly important insect that we definitely cannot live without, and unfortunately it is experiencing devastating effects. So, now let's take a look at our oceans. And if you were participating in the first climate lecture I did, you'll know that our ocean temperatures are incredibly warm. Oxygen levels are declining because the ocean temperatures are getting so hot. And then in addition to that, oceans are absorbing an incredible amount of carbon dioxide. So they're acidifying. This is actually an image from NOAA, and you can see in 2019, all around our world, you can see it's mostly record warmest or much warmer than average temperatures or warmer than average. So this has a huge impact on, of course, our corals, which are the nurseries of our oceans. Without corals, we're not going to have fish, which is also going to have a huge impact on our fishing industry. How much is fish going to cost 10 or 15 years from now? And then our tourism industry is taking a huge hit as well. For example, in the Florida Keys, less than 10% of the reef is now covered with living coral. So that also talks about job security in certain areas. So, the oceans play such a critical role in our livelihoods, especially here in Florida. And so we need to understand that we play a role in the impact that we have in it, and why it's so important to understand the urgency for bold climate action from our leaders. And I also want, to highlight the whale, because it's not just about the coral reefs and the fish that are being impacted. The rapid warming of the planet is leading to a loss of habitat for whales and dolphins, and greater competition for a diminishing amount of prey species. It is affecting the timing and ranges of their migration, their distribution, and even their ability to reproduce. These animals, in addition to having to fight, you know, these issues with their habitat, they're also being hunted, some to near extinction. And the whale is a really amazing animal. It's not just because it's such a majestic animal, but also it plays a really critical role in the health of our oceans and in climate change. So I have this really amazing video. I hope you enjoy it. Let me know if you can hear the sound that explains to you you know, how incredible this animal really is.
One of the most exciting scientific findings of the past half-century has been the discovery of widespread trophic cascades. A trophic cascade is an ecological process which starts at the top of the food chain and tumbles all the way down to the bottom. We all know that whales eat fish and krill, and some people, certain politicians in Japan for instance, have argued that killing whales is good for human beings, as it boosts the food available for us to eat. And so you would think. But as the great whales declined, so did the numbers of fish and krill. It seems counterintuitive. Surely their numbers would rise as their major predators disappeared. But it now turns out that whales not only eat these animals, they also keep them alive. In fact, they help to sustain the entire living system of the ocean. Whales feed at depth in waters that are often pitch dark, and then they return to the surface, to the photic zone, where there's enough light for photosynthesis to happen. There they release what biologists call fecal plumes, vast outpourings of poo, poonamis. These plumes are rich in iron and nitrogen, nutrients which are often very scarce in the surface waters. And these nutrients fertilize the plant plankton that lives in the only place where plants can survive, the photic zone. Fertilizing the surface waters isn't the only thing the whales do. By plunging up and down through the water column, they also keep kicking the plankton back up into the photic zone, giving it more time to reproduce before it sinks into the abyss. Even today, though whale populations have been greatly reduced, the vertical mixing of water caused by movements of animals up and down through the column of the oceans is astonishingly roughly the same as the amount of mixing caused by all the world's wind and waves and tides. More plant plankton means more animal plankton, on which the larger creatures then feed. In other words, more whales means more fish and krill. But the story doesn't end here, because plant plankton not only feeds the animals of the sea, it also absorbs carbon dioxide from the atmosphere. When eventually it sinks to the ocean floor, it takes this carbon out of circulation down to a place where it remains for thousands of years. The more whales there are, the more plankton there is. The more plankton there is, the more carbon is drawn out of the air. When whales were at their historical populations, before great numbers of them were killed, it seems that they might have been responsible for removing tens of millions of tons of carbon from the atmosphere every year. Whales change the climate. The return of the great whales, if they're allowed to recover, could be seen as a benign form of geoengineering. It could undo some of the damage we've done, both to the living systems of the sea and to the atmosphere.
So they're an incredible animal, and I don't know if any of you knew this. It was a surprise to me before coming to Clio, that whales play such a critical role in the health, not just of our oceans, but also in reducing greenhouse gases, which is what's contributing to the global warming. So I don't know if you've read in the news, but here at a local level, Miami-Dade has been tremendously impacted in the last couple of weeks with devastating fish kills in Biscayne Bay. And I know that up and down the coast of Florida, there's a lot of, they also suffer a lot from algal blooms. And that tends to happen because higher water temperatures, as I mentioned, leads to lower oxygen levels. In addition to that, runoff from things like leaking septic tanks, stormwater runoff, sewage leakage, and fertilizers is contributing to these devastating impacts that we're seeing in our oceans. So we play such a critical role because this right here is all human. This is all easy fixes that we could do at a local level with our municipalities to make sure that our waters are cleaner for our marine animals. And it's always important when we talk about biodiversity to talk about our demand for plastic, because plastic is a double whammy for the environment. It's made of petroleum, which is a fossil fuel that causes global warming. B, it needs all of this energy or electricity to produce these containers that we use. And then 91% of plastic is not recycled, 91%. So anyone who thinks we're going to recycle our way out of plastic is wrong. We have to lower our consumption of plastic. And by 2050, scientists estimate that there will be more plastic than fish in the ocean. That is crazy. 2050 is not too long, it's not too far from now. For any of you that have grandchildren, think about how old they will be when it's 2050. My son Nico is 14 and my daughter Gata is 12. They're going to be around my age. So that's going to be, I can't even think about what that means to them. And, we already know that there's studies that show that humans are now showing, microplastic is now showing up in our feces. So you don't need to be a scientist to understand what those kinds of health impacts are going to be. So we really have to reduce our demand for plastic. And this picture here that you see, this is a huge, there are huge garbage patches in our ocean, and this is the most famous one. It's called the Great Pacific Garbage Patch. The patch covers an estimated surface area of 1.6 million square kilometers. That's about an area twice the size of Texas or 3 times the size of France, of plastic and garbage that comes from us. So we really need to play a role in taking a lot more responsibility in our demand, because it's what we demand that companies produce. So why does this matter? I mean, besides the animal lovers in my chat today, it matters because our natural resources play a huge benefit in our lives, from recreation and tourism to the medicine that we take, to our food and shelter. And from land management, the invasive species that we're letting run rapid, like for example, the python in the Everglades, and our pollution and recreation overuse is really taking a huge toll on our biodiversity and our natural resources. And the more we hit this, the less benefits we're going to have. And so, as I mentioned, it's obvious that we know biodiversity plays a key role in our food and tourism, but biodiversity also plays a big role in our health, especially when it comes to our medication. Out of all the medications we produce that come from our biodiversity, 74% come from plants, 18% from fungi, 5% from bacteria, and 3% from vertebrate species like snakes and frogs. According to the National Cancer Institute, at least 70% of the new drugs are derived from natural sources. So as we think about like the amount of plants that have already gone extinct that we don't even know about, that could be, have potential, could have been potential discoveries for new medications and vaccines, it's huge. So we really have to pay close attention to our connection to biodiversity because it does have a direct impact on our health. And now I'm going to show you a really incredible video on this little hero that nobody knows about and is playing a vital role in COVID vaccines, and it's the horseshoe crab.
The fight against the coronavirus has an unusual ally, horseshoe crabs. The animals are helping researchers develop a vaccine against the virus, and Jess Clark shows us how this all might work.
They've been around for, what, 450 million years or something like that.
Horseshoe crabs and COVID-19. How are the two connected?
Well, that's a good question.
Dr. Mark Martindale runs the UF Whitney Marine Lab in Marineland. He can explain.
All substances that enter or make contact with human blood have to be tested by the FDA to make sure that they're not bringing any kinds of contaminants into the human body.
That's where the horseshoe crab comes in. Specifically, it's blood.
Their blood is blue.
In pharmaceutical labs around the world, that blue blood is extracted from the horseshoe crabs. Certain parts of the animal's blood can actually detect if there are toxins that can harm humans. So all kinds of medical treatments are tested with compounds from horseshoe crab blood.
This happens every single day for every single blood transfusion, for every single vaccine that we get. If it passes the test and it's allowed, the FDA approves it for use in human subjects.
Here's where the coronavirus comes in. Horseshoe crab blood is being used to test the safety of potential COVID-19 vaccines.
So before any coronavirus vaccine would be FDA approved for clinical use in human beings, it would have to be tested with this horseshoe crab test to make sure that it was safe to inject into the human body.
Martindale says 500,000 horseshoe crabs are collected every year for their blood. Some of that blood is removed and then the animals are returned to the wild, but not all of them survive.
It's a little bit of a worry because horseshoe crab populations have been declining over the decades.
Projects are underway to synthetically generate the same kind of compounds that these prehistoric-looking creatures figured out how to make millions of years ago. Jessica Clark, First Coast News, on your side.
So who knew that horseshoe crabs play such a vital role in our vaccines and are now helping us with COVID? Okay, I was looking at a comment. It was Tammy saying thank you everyone for coming. So, now we're here, right? We're dealing with this pandemic. We're all stuck at home. So what has happened with nature? And I'm sure you've seen these images already, but it's always important to remind ourselves that places like India, look at the air pollution before and after COVID. This doesn't just have a huge impact on our biodiversity, it also has a huge impact on the quality of our air. This is Italy. And the same can be said about Florida. NASA actually provided satellite images of Florida before and after COVID, and it was huge, the amount of pollution that was there before and was there afterwards. We don't typically think that there's air pollution in Florida, but we actually have a lot of areas in Florida that are not considered safe. The American Lung Association came out with a state of the air report and actually gave grades to cities all across Florida and the US. Miami-Dade, if I'm not mistaken, got, I think, a D or a C or a D. I can't recall off the top of my head, but it's a pretty low grade considering we're a coastal city. So we really do have to understand that, our environmental impact plays a role in our health as well. And so, now let's look at solutions because there are so many solutions out there. So we're going to focus on some solutions that Mother Nature is giving us and to understand why it's so important to protect them. So here we have, these are a sample of the peatlands. They're a type of wetland which are among the most valuable ecosystems on Earth. They are critical for preserving global biodiversity, providing safe drinking water, minimizing flood risks, and helping address climate change. Forestry, farming, and fuel extraction are among the threats to this carbon-rich peatlands. It is estimated that in the US and Canada together, there's about 40 to 45% of the world's peatlands, which are located in an area called the boreal zone. Peatlands are also home to a huge amount of our, of our plant species and animals. And, it's important to celebrate that in 2019, the UN Environmental Assembly adopted its first ever resolution to conserve and restore the peatlands. And a fun fact for the women in my audience, I don't know if it was intentional, but it was actually passed on International Women's Day, and it was spearheaded by women, this resolution to conserve and restore our peatlands. So here is nature, giving us a great solution that we just need to protect and restore. Another one is our planting of our trees. And yes, trees play a vital role in our biodiversity as well as mitigating the climate crisis. But there is a difference in age, old versus new. There is a difference. Old trees, by virtue of their age and size, can hold far more carbon than younger ones. So when we cut down these old trees, we in turn, we're taking these trees and turning them from a carbon sink to a carbon source, because when we cut them down, they release the carbon that they've absorbed. So it's incredibly important to protect our old mature trees and forests. And then when we do plant new trees, it's really important to understand what trees we do plant to make sure that they're native to the area. And then Florida's wetlands, like the Everglades, they're unique to the world. We have such a treasure, in our backyard, and we really do have to be more conscious of what's happening with the Everglades. So saltwater, as our sea levels rise, the saltwater is coming from underneath us, and it's rising in South Florida because we're made of coral underneath, or limestone rock. And so that salt water is actually encroaching and impacting our Everglades with the fresh water. And also construction is playing a devastating role on our Everglades. And something to celebrate is in 2020, a Florida judge ruled against the 836 extension that would have been catastrophic to the Everglades, that would have just saved drivers a couple extra minutes in traffic. So this goes to show that when the community, when Floridians come together and say, no, this is not something that we are for, elected officials listen. And so it's really important for us to continue to advocate to protect our Everglades, because they are home to some of the most incredible biodiversity on Earth. And now, we talk a lot about agricultural industry having this huge impact in our greenhouse gas emissions, but they can also make a real difference. So there's these three things. One's called silvopasture, the second one is biochar, and the third is seaweed. These are some incredibly easy solutions. Silvopasture is just simply planting more trees in farmland that's used for cattle. You don't need all grass. You can actually have trees in between. And that also provides shade for the animals. And again, those are trees that absorb the carbon dioxide and release oxygen. Biochar is the excess brush and timber in forests that can be removed to prevent wildfires, and the slow bake in a low oxygen environment to create charcoal biochar. When buried, biochar makes the soil more nutritious, promotes food production, increases water efficiency, and holds carbon in the ground for centuries. So biochar is another thing that, that we can start to do more of and see more of. And then a curious fact about seaweed, there are studies that show, cows burp methane, which is a much more devastating greenhouse gas and carbon dioxide. And there are studies that show that cows, the methane burped by a cow could be cut by up to 99% if farmers change 2% of the cow's diet to seaweed. We eat seaweed, and so cows can eat seaweed too. And that would be a really easy solution for our cattle ranchers to incorporate. So really cool study of how nature, providing us with seaweed can play an impactful role in the methane that our cows release. Then, there's something called regenerative agriculture. As our global population continues to grow, healthy farmland is critical, but in order to meet the demand for food without damaging the environment, the whole industry needs to take a different approach. Regenerative agriculture is a method of farming that's slowly gaining popularity. General Mills, which is one of our largest food companies in the US, is now committed to bringing this practice to 1 million acres of farmland by 2030. These methods include growing cover crops after the harvest instead of allowing the soil to sit unprotected. Cover crops help trap carbon in the ground and encourage nutrient development in the soil. And adding livestock is also important as manure delivers nutrients to the soil. Another factor is encouraging farmers to grow a wider range of crops as opposed to just one or two. So all of these things can also enrich our soil. So there is a technique called regenerative agriculture that our farmers are slowly adopting in companies as well, that's going to play a real vital role in solutions towards mitigating the climate crisis. And then, have you ever thought about what happens to degraded land? Once it's lost its productivity due to what we do to it. And bamboo is actually a great solution that nature gives us. Bamboo rapidly sequesters carbon in biomass and soil, taking it out of the air faster than almost any other plant. And it actually thrives on degraded land. Long-lived bamboo products can also store carbon over time. Bamboo can be used for building materials, paper, furniture, charcoal. There's so many uses to bamboo. In reality, bamboo is not even classified as a wood. It's a woody grass plant variety. So this is a great solution to our degraded lands. And now we have to think about our own role. We are part of the problem, especially living in the US. The US by far has the single largest consumer market of any country worldwide, representing over 26% of the entire global consumer market. And I know my generation plays a big role, and my kids, play a big role, where we've just gotten used to, I want this, and you just click and shop away. And, if my grandfather were still around, he'd be horrified, quite frankly. He'd always ask me, but do you need that? Why are you spending so much money on this? Do you need that? And so it really comes back to understanding our demand, and do we really need that? Because if the entire world lived and consumed the way we do in the US, we would need 5 planets. Think about that. 5 planets. So it really is up to us in the US as leaders, world leaders, to make this change and lower our consumption and our demand for products that we don't really need. Now, adding more green to our lives is always an option. Where can we include it? Think of your house, your yard, medians, office buildings. Look at how cool, this driveway looks. Office buildings incorporating green in their walls is a beautiful way, really beautiful way of mitigating the climate change and the climate crisis, and also improves air quality in the cities. And then, making your own yard edible is also a great way of adding green to your home. And now there's a thing called green roofs, which a lot of businesses and companies you're starting to see, and you can do this in your home as well, which is basically just adding plants to your roof. And this also helps the bees and butterflies as they migrate. To have a place to land and feed. So green roofs are also a new hit. And then looking at the way we structure our community so that we don't keep encroaching on our land. Mixed urban development. So what does that mean? It means when I walk down the street, there's this giant Publix at the end of my street, and it takes up like an entire block. And on top of it, there's nothing. And really, we should look at the top of it as real estate. On top of that, Publix could go office buildings, could go, residential buildings. In our underserved communities, there are some things called food deserts where people simply do not have a supermarket in walking distance of their home. So if they don't have a car, they can't get groceries. So they often don't have access to fruits and vegetables and healthy meals. So how about incorporating, grocery stores in underserved communities that you can then build up affordable housing on, or pharmacies? So we have to start thinking about real estate value on the top of these buildings. And now I end with my final video.
Biodiversity is a term that represents the total variety of all life on Earth. That's a big thing to sum up.
Oh, there you go.
Thousands of different wild habitats, millions of different species, billions of different individuals, and the trillions of different characteristics they all have. The total biodiversity of our planet is immense, which is a good thing, because the more biodiversity, the more secure all life on Earth is, including ourselves. Only when life is at its most varied, vigorous, biodiverse, can we hope to thrive. We may not know it, but we need towering forests across 1/3 of the land surface to lock away carbon and keep the climate stable. We need millions of pollinators and billions of soil organisms and megatons of plankton to keep the food we eat in supply. We need strange plants deep in jungles to create our medicines, and coral reefs and mangrove swamps to protect the coasts we depend upon. Our planet's biodiversity provides all the things we need for free. But it will only do so if there's lots of it, and at the moment it's under attack. In the last 50 years, our activities have dramatically reduced biodiversity across the globe. We've snuffed out habitats, reduced populations of wild animals by 60%, and even driven whole species extinct. The number of lions in Africa has dropped by 65%. The number of individual flying insects in Europe has dropped by 75%. The number of bluefin tuna in the Pacific has dropped by 95%. Biodiversity is dropping everywhere and fast. This is catastrophic for nature and therefore ourselves. We talk about climate change a lot, but biodiversity loss is as important an issue. How do we stop this loss of life? How do we ensure that biodiversity, our planet's vital statistic, begins to increase again? In fact, we already know exactly what to do.
Which is respect nature. It comes down to that. It's simply understanding the value that nature brings to our life and respecting it and protecting it. The way we respect and value our families and protect our families, we must do the same for our biodiversity. And we can. And as we return, once we, hopefully a vaccine comes soon for COVID, once we do start to slowly return back to our daily life, every day comes a new opportunity to teach people about the importance of biodiversity, to protect biodiversity, to reduce the demand for products and services that we don't really need in order to find that beautiful balance that we once had with nature and we can again have with nature. So with this, I end my presentation and open it up to questions. And I hope you enjoyed it. And you learned something new.
Yes,
I
I
do have a
liked this.
That was really interesting, to say the least, especially pointing out about the cows and feeding them something different, about the bamboo and all the property that's available above a supermarket or above a shopping center. Thanks.
Thank you.
I have a question. regarding, you were talking about the peatlands.
Yeah.
Peatlands. What are they, where are they located primarily, and what is the makeup of them?
So the peatlands are, they're like the Everglades is a type of wetland that's
Right.
like the peatlands, and all of these forests, the big ones are in the boreal zone, which is on the northern part of the US and Canada. And they make up, you know, they're a combination of all kinds of plants and trees and animals. But they're a massive, massive forest, and they absorb so much carbon dioxide we can't even begin to imagine. And the issue is when we cut down these trees, they actually release the carbon dioxide that they've been storing, which is why it's so important to stop cutting them and actually restore, protect, and restore them. And in US and Canada, we have about 45% of the world's peatlands. And it's just really these incredible forests, really, if you can think about it that way.
More forest than water then. That's okay. And the biochar.
Yeah.
What did you say that's made from?
So biochar is excess brush and timber in forests that, you know, when they're removed, it's what timber from forests, and you can actually remove that from the ground, and then you bake it in it's a slow bake in a low oxygen environment that creates like this charcoal, and then you return that back to the soil, and the soil actually becomes more nutritious.
So
And
the brush is collected then, actually. There are companies that do that? Is that it?
Yeah, there are companies that, there are farmers that do that. We need more of it. It's something that's new and slowly catching popularity. It's always hard to start something new and try it out, but our farmers and, you know, companies like General Mills are really starting to lead in that.
Good.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Is there anybody else that has some questions for her? Do we dare talk about hurricanes again?
One question, because I was blown away. How about the horseshoe crab? Wow, who would have thought that they have this weird blue blood, and that every, you know, vaccine that we take actually has to go through their blue blood to get approved by the FDA. You know, this is amazing. Something as simple as a horseshoe crab that, you know, we would have never thought was so incredibly special. So that was one of my aha moments when I was doing this presentation for you. I was like, oh, the horseshoe crab, look at him go.
I agree. That was really, really interesting. And certainly, my question is, like, how did somebody think of that to begin with? Like, you know, here you find this horseshoe crab, you know, well, I used to see them, yeah, plentiful, well, not plentiful, certainly more in the Northeast on the beaches than I do here. But it's like, who the heck thought of that in the first place? You know, what else can we do with these creatures? And just overall, it's very interesting and informative, and I feel very smart right now.
Oh, thank you. Thank you so much. May I just ask, you know, what are some of you, and not necessarily from the presentation, but what are some of your favorite animals that you would feel, you know, that you feel passionate about protecting? I open it up to the group.
Jeez, that's hard.
Well, yesterday was National Dog Day. I mean, so you have to, you know, you can't forget the dog. You have to think about our domesticated animals as well. But I mean,
I'm thinking about the apes and the safari type animals, the lion and the tigers and the all
how's
this.
the polar bear population holding up? Not well.
Not good. Our polar bears are not doing well at all. No, they're not. That's just something that, you know, it's a reality we deal with. Our animals in Africa as well, you know, with these extended, insanely long droughts, it's becoming more and more challenging for them. So, you know, there are a lot of conservation efforts around the world to try and really help these animals survive. And, you know, we'll see how it goes, but they're, you know, they're incredibly special. Anyone else want to share an animal they think about when they think of conservation? And I do agree on the dog. Dog person.
Well, I grew up in Washington, D.C., so you know, we grew up all the time going to the zoo, and their main thing was saving the pandas. So, you know, and then it was like a monumental holiday when Ling Ling and Sing Sing and, you know, had a baby, and, you know, it's just, and then just looking at the pictures today about the white rhino and seeing just a bird, you know, pigeon. I think there was a trivia question we had about like a pigeon. Homing pigeons are now extinct. I mean, and they had billions of them, and it's just like, it's crazy to think how easy or how quick something can be gone like that. And everything's an eye opener.
Yeah. I'm also concerned about the bees.
Yeah.
Yeah, they're integral. Sure. Well,
I don't know how many of you.
Whoops. No.
I don't know how many of you have Netflix at home, but if you do, I strongly recommend, it's a series called Connected, and I'm watching it with my family, and we're really enjoying it. And it talks about, for example, like there's a bird in the US that can understand when hurricane season is going to start. And based on that, they migrate depending on when they're more accurate. These birds are more accurate than NOAA. There's another one on how the Saharan desert plays a critical role in not only lowering the intensity of our hurricanes, but how it also plays a critical role in the nutrition of our Amazon forests. It's a really cool series, all based on science, but real fun and upbeat. And it just shows how we're all connected to nature in really surprising ways I had never heard of.
I think we will check that one out, right, everybody? And I will pass that along when I send off your recording to all our members. I'll suggest that they all watch Connected. So.
Well, right now I'm concerned about preserving this animal, so that means it's dinner time.
Yes.
Thank you so much. It was a wonderful
Always
presentation.
food, Paul. Always food.
Absolutely.
Thanks. All right.
Nice to see you, by the way, Ellen. Give our best to Mark as well, please.
Well, thank you.
Good night, all.
Everybody,
Thank you.
good night.
Good night. A pleasure. And thank you so much for your time tonight.
Thank you.
Does anyone else have any questions or comments they would like to share?
I have one. I don't want to take over, but I have another one. Along our golf course, we had a lot of bamboo that I cut down. I don't know if they're planning to replace it with all the new building they're doing. I don't know if Tammy, I don't know if it's something that you can check into.
Yeah, I do remember that bamboo. It was like hiding a lot of things, right? It was basically like a barrier.
I was there, it was cut down. I don't know. You know, I haven't been there for months.
Mike Eustace said that all the greenery there is going to be replaced, but they had to go and get the footings in and the buildings constructed. Otherwise, it was going to be too damaged to try to save.
Where are they going to put?
So it's going to be replaced.
The question is if they're going to put bamboo back.
Bamboo, I don't know. I can ask them next week. You have a meeting.
Okay.
I have a question for Natasha. Natasha, because of so many of us ordering food in, not only at this club, but at many others, there is so much of the heavy plastic that's being accumulated. And are there any plans in the works nationally for doing something with all of this plastic so that it could be not recycled, but used for other kinds of things?
Repurposed.
So
Really,
excellent question. Plastic is such a complex issue because there are so many different types of plastic, from the thickness of the plastic to different colors of plastic that make up each container. And so that's been one of the hardest issues with recycling, that it's simply not financially a lucrative industry, unfortunately. There are certain cities, Coral Gables here was one of them, I believe Gainesville. There were a couple cities in the state of Florida that wanted to ban plastic bags. You know, we do have paper bags. The paper can come from sustainable forests. And we do, you know, also have the option for our take-home bags. So they had implemented a plastic ban on these, on something so basic as a plastic bag, but unfortunately, at a state level, they did not allow the cities to move forward with that ban, and so they lost the fight. So a lot of that also has to do with us as consumers, you know, like I go to my local, before COVID, when I was going, I would always tell my manager, you know, why are you offering so much plastic bag? Why don't you offer paper? You know, make it a point to get people to bring their grocery bags. It's a lot about communicating to these businesses, these companies, the Publix, the Winn-Dixies, the Whole Foods of the world. Whole Foods is pretty good about paper. But now with COVID, excellent question. So when I order, because I take good care of myself because I see my mom a lot, and she's, you know, 75 and has high blood pressure. So when the person's shopping for me, I always ask them to please pack in paper and not plastic, which for the most part they're really good about. And then when I'm ordering, for example, certain things like fruits and vegetables, I ask them to simply not put it in a plastic bag, because I'm going to wash them anyways. You know, I wash my apples, I wash my tomatoes. So there is no need for those plastic bags. With regards to containers, and I didn't show it in this presentation, but I'll let you know what's going on. There's something called the Loop Store, L-O-O-P. And it hasn't come to Florida yet, but I'm hounding them so they do. They're already in the Northeast. And it's on the same idea of the milkman. So how the milkman would drop off the milk, and then when it was done with that glass bottle, they would pick it up and then, you know, refill it. The Loop Store is working with top companies, Procter & Gamble and Unilever, and what they're doing is changing the packaging of these companies to be metal or glass. And they come in these really cool refrigerator style boxes. And so you order it online, and they have everything from like shampoos and Clorox and Lysol, all the brands we're used to. They just don't cut, they come in metal or glass containers. Even if they're broken, it doesn't matter. Once you're done with it, you put it back in the box, you send it to the Loop Store, and the Loop Store sends those containers back to the manufacturers to be reused. So it's about a circular economy. Instead of having that product end up in a flat economy all the way to the landfill or our oceans, it's going back to the manufacturer. Old Coke bottles used to do that. I don't know if you remember, but you know, that we used to do that. I don't know where along the lines we became so comfortable with just tossing it out, you know, and those things cost money. That's a good glass that can be reused, and stop using so much plastic. So there is something in the works with the Loop Store, and they are working very, very close to a lot of the top manufacturers of plastic containers. We just need them to come to Florida.
Yes. Yeah. Everybody, you know, we all try to do our own part. You know, I know, you know, every day, you know, everybody's always looking at the club, you know, with different straws and plastic and recycling, but, you know, it can get very expensive as well. Bamboo is wonderful, but, you know, it's crazy expensive when you look at it. And then when you start recycling and you use bamboo and then you give it to somebody, then where is that going to go? You know, are they recycling it properly? We're doing our part, and it all flows down to you know, like you said, from the top down, we all have to be responsible. And then when we recycle it, we put it in the hands of the trash people, and then you find out, oh, they just throw it all together and don't recycle. So it's like, why? That's frustrating. So I'm going to try to, for one of our lectures, get somebody from the Waste Authority and explain how they recycle and what they do, and get somebody to talk about that.
That's a great idea. And I will, you know, say one thing that I want to share with you. You're the first country club that has ever approached the Clio Institute. The fact that a country club would approach our nonprofit to provide education is huge. More than anything else, providing your members with this information so that they can turn around and talk to their kids and their grandkids about this is a huge part of our solutions. You are providing climate literacy and mobilizing your members to, you know, to understand this problem better and do more. So kudos to your country club for being, you know, for spearheading this 3-series lecture, because you're the only, you know, we've gotten now other country clubs calling us, but you were the first. And the fact that you value this education and wanted to share it with your members is amazing, quite frankly. So I'm very honored to be with you guys tonight.
Well, that is super sweet. Thank you. Yes, I think, yeah, it's awesome. You know, my goal is to have our members love where you live and to take care of where you live. And then there's so much, you know, right under our noses that we should all know about. So that's been the goal of our activities during COVID, is to learn more about, you know, Florida and take care of it. So thank you so much, Natalia. And I know we'll reach out, and I'll make sure all the other country clubs keep on reaching out to you. And my faithful members that logged on today, thank you for joining me. Mrs. North, Mrs. Greenberger, Mrs. Hernandez, Mrs. Kavanaugh, thank you for joining us. And I'm sorry we didn't have bingo tonight, but we'll pick it up next.
It was
we'll pick
excellent.
It up next month.
It was excellent. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you so much.
I'm glad it's recorded so we can, the parts that we weren't, you know, that slipped by us, we can go back and look at.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.